Good morning. Well, I don't come from a family of educators, so when I announced to my extended family and friends that I had won this incredible honor, they said, "Congrats! So what do you get? Do you get like a vacation or a parking spot?" And I said, "No. What they do is they send you an email saying congratulations, and then they work to put you in as many socially threatening situations they can think of, like this." So over the summer, I've been preparing for these socially threatening situations. I've been power posing. Seriously, it's a scientifically proven fact that if you power pose for about 2 minutes a day, your level of testosterone increases and your level of cortisol, the stress hormone, decreases. So I thought I'd start at the top. I thought I would start in Dr. Finley's office. Power pose there, get some good vibes going. Next, he was a great sport, thank you. Next, I practiced in front of my family several times, and you can see the results here. Mom, we're over it. Mom, they just want to get back to their buildings. All joking aside, I'm thrilled to be here today acknowledging this incredible honor representing my Moreland Ridge Husky family and librarians in our district. With me today is my husband Brandon, our daughter Aiden, who will be at the Freshman Center this year, my daughter Avery, who's a 7th grader at Moreland Ridge, my mom Maya, and her husband Tony traveled from Oklahoma. So over the past year, I've been fascinated with this idea of grit and what makes a person of grit and how we can bring forth grit in our students. Grit is stick-to-itiveness. It's the toughness and resolve that keeps you pressing on when it would just be easier to give up. In multiple studies done across the United States, grit in students was a more powerful indicator of graduation in high school and beyond than how much students cared about their classes and their studies and how conscientious they were about school and even how safe they felt in school. So I grew up in Tuttle, Oklahoma, which is a small farming community about 20 minutes outside of Oklahoma City. I grew up surrounded by people who worked hard and endured challenging situations because they had to, because it was their livelihood. I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' farm where they raised wheat and cattle. And my brother and I, we built forts, we waded in creeks, and we would often drive lunch or dinner out to my grandfather who was on a tractor or a combine. Growing up in a small farming community could seem boring at times, and I couldn't wait to move on to new adventures. But looking back, I'm so thankful that I grew up in a community that taught me about grit before I even knew such a term. I grew up watching people work hard, have a firm handshake while looking you in the eye, and show up for their neighbors. I know coming from a community like Tuttle is why I have been so fascinated with grit over the past year and wondering how I can directly relate that to my profession as an educator. I would highly recommend this book. I can't get up here as a librarian and not suggest one book to you. It's called Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. And in one of her first studies, she headed here to West Point to understand why some cadets finish first, while some cadets graduate from this prestigious U.S. military academy and why some don't. So each year, about 14,000 students begin the application process, and many of them are only in their junior year of high school. But only 1,200 of those applicants are enrolled and admitted. Yet 1 in 5 cadets will drop out before graduation, and a large number of those dropouts occur during the first 7 weeks in an intensive period known as Beast Barracks. It's described in the West Point Handbook as the most physically and emotionally demanding part of your 4 years there. So what was different about those cadets who graduated from West Point and those who didn't? Clearly, many among this elite group of students was equally talented, and most of them were even captains of their high school sports teams. They were all met with challenges that exceeded their current skills. But what rose to the top was a never give up attitude. It was grit. So through her studies, Duckworth found that grit and talent had no relation to each other. Being gritty does not mean you're talented, and being talented does not mean you're gritty. But the most successful students realized that their failure was not a permanent condition. Some extremely talented people are great when things are going well, but they fall apart when things aren't. Even Darwin himself was a plodder. He wasn't a natural at many things in life. He mentions in his autobiography that he had a terrible memory, but he was a great observer. He was a striver, a plodder, and he believed that zeal and hard work were ultimately more important than intellectual ability. And that's where I'm striving to focus as an educator, how to bring forth that kind of grit in students. Students with grit become adults that companies want to hire and that change the world around us. When we spotlight the most talented students in the room, we risk missing the gritty kids, the strivers, the plodders, those putting forth the most effort. So how do we teach this grit? Well, that's where I'm at now. I'm looking to manufacture situations in my classroom, my library, to bring forth grit. I want my students to know that their ability to learn is not fixed, that their ability to learn can change with their effort and endurance. I often tell my students I was not gifted in school. As a matter of fact, in elementary and middle school, I often felt embarrassed because a lot of my friends qualified for the gifted program, but I did not. I didn't make outstanding ACT scores, but I worked hard in school, and I was the first in my family to graduate from college. I like to remind my students, like Simon Sinek says, that things like job satisfaction and building meaningful relationships and success in life is a slow, uncomfortable, messy process. And that people who have grit and succeed fail almost more than anyone else. But it's what we do with that failure that counts. It's our level of grit. It's helping our students find endurance and not just enthusiasm. And lastly, we as educators can give students all the access to tangible resources that they need. Things like books, and paper, and technology, and I'm big on books. But if we don't model for them and teach them strength of character, and bravery, and backbone, and toughness, and fortitude, and perseverance, we're missing an opportunity to give them one of the most important resources to success in life. Blue Springs has some of the grittiest teachers, educators, and support staff that I've been around. And I'm so grateful that my daughters get to see that in you every day. You have picked my girls up for years, and you have taken them home safely. You have built relationships with them. I said I wouldn't cry because crying's not gritty. You have sewn costumes for them for school musicals. And you have painted our library, and you've moved countless things around. You've even brought up a baby turtle because you knew my daughter was interested in them. You give us a sense of pride to teach in facilities that are beautifully maintained. And as teachers, you have supported my girls, and you've challenged them. You've challenged them to endure and not just look for the easy button in life. So this school year, let's teach our students about grit. Thank you.
Well done. up here.